Oh, well, when you've been around as long as I have, you're down and up many times. And that's what sort of...
In the 1960s, these 7 women were the faces of a generation. They dominated the silver screen, defined fashion, and were chased by paparazzi everywhere they went. But today, if you stood next to them in a grocery line, you probably wouldn't even blink. 43 years after their peak, these icons have undergone such radical transformations that they are now completely unrecognizable. From reclusive legends to stars who simply walked away, here are 7 famous 1960s actresses that no one recognizes today. Barbara Eden. Barbara Eden didn't just play a genie. For a moment in time, she was magic. At the height of the 1960s, her face was everywhere, glowing, playful, unforgettable. She wasn't just part of television history, she helped shape it. But like so many stars of that era, time didn't just move forward. It quietly pulled her out of the spotlight, piece by piece. Before the world ever saw her in that iconic pink costume, Barbara Eden was just another young woman trying to find her place in Hollywood. Born Barbara Jean Moorhead on August 23, 1931, in Tucson, Arizona, her early life didn't hint at the kind of fame that was coming. She was a cheerleader in high school, a pop singer as a teenager, and by 1949, she had graduated from Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco, already chasing something bigger. By the mid-1950s, she had started stepping into the industry, quietly at first. Her film debut came in 1956 with Back from Eternity, though it barely made a ripple. What followed was a string of roles that, while steady, didn't exactly set her apart. Through the late 50s and early 60s, she moved from one project to another, appearing in shows like I Love Lucy, Perry Mason, Gunsmoke, and Route 66. She even led a pilot titled The Barbara Eden Show, but it never saw the light of day. It was as if everything was building towards something, but nothing had quite clicked yet. And then, in 1965, everything changed. That was the year she stepped into the role that would define her forever, the moment she became Jeannie. Created by Sidney Sheldon as a response to the success of Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie introduced audiences to a mischievous, lovable Jeannie who could turn the ordinary into chaos with a blink. Paired alongside Larry Hagman, who played astronaut Major Anthony Nelson, Eden didn't just act the role, she owned it. The premise was simple but irresistible. A stranded astronaut discovers a mysterious pink bottle on a deserted island. Inside it is Jeannie, beautiful, devoted, and completely unpredictable. She follows him home to Cocoa Beach, Florida, where her attempts to help constantly spiral into magical disasters. Together with Nelson's friend, Major Roger Healy, they try to keep her existence a secret and fail in the most entertaining ways possible. But what really made the show work wasn't just the concept, it was the chemistry. Eden and Hagman had a natural rhythm, the kind you can't fake. It pulled audiences in and kept them there. Week after week, the show grew, eventually running for 5 years and building a loyal following that never really faded. Even decades later, I Dream of Jeannie didn't disappear. It lingered, and so did she. Years after the cameras stopped rolling, Eden would still reflect on those early days, remembering how it all began on a cold beach in Zuma, standing beside Hagman, not yet knowing they were about to create something timeless. By the time he passed away in 2012, those memories hadn't dimmed. If anything, they had only grown sharper, tied to a chapter of her life that never quite let go of the public imagination. But fame like that comes with a strange cost, because once the world locks you into a role that iconic, everything that follows is measured against it. 8 years after Jeannie, Eden tried to step into something new with Harper Valley PTA, playing Stella Johnson, a bold, no-nonsense single mother. The film, inspired by a popular country song, did well enough to become a TV series, which ran for 2 seasons in the early 1980s. It was different, grounded, and far removed from magic. But for many, she was still Jeannie. Behind the scenes, her life carried its own weight. Her first marriage to Michael and Sarah ended in divorce after 16 years. Their son, Matthew, born in 1965, would later struggle with addiction and tragically pass away in 2001 from a drug overdose, a loss that stayed with her long after the headlines faded. She remarried, divorced again, and eventually found stability with John Eichholz in 1991. And somewhere between all of that, she began to tell her own story. In 1986, she released her autobiography, Barbara Eden, My Story, followed years later by her memoir, Genie Out of the Bottle, pulling back the curtain on a life that had often been seen only through a fantasy lens. Even now, she hasn't completely vanished. She appears from time to time. Commercials, cameos, quiet nods to the role that made her a household name. There was even talk of a I Dream of Jeannie film where she would return in a smaller role, passing the torch. But like many things tied to the past, it never fully materialized. Julie Newmar. Julie Newmar didn't just wear the catsuit. She became Catwoman before the world even realized what that meant. At a time when television was still figuring itself out, she stepped into a role no one had fully defined yet, and somehow she made it timeless. The voice, the movement, the quiet confidence, it all came together in a way that didn't just capture attention, it held onto it. But just like so many faces from that era, the spotlight that once followed her everywhere slowly drifted, leaving behind a legacy people remember, even if they no longer recognize the woman herself. Before she ever purred her way across the screen, Julie Newmar was building something far more grounded. Born Julia Chalaine Newmeyer on August 16, 1933, in Los Angeles, she grew up in a household that blended discipline with creativity. Her father had been a professional football player before moving into education, while her mother had danced in the Ziegfeld Follies. That influence showed early. By the time most teenagers were still figuring things out, Newmar had already graduated high school at just 15, traveled across Europe, and returned home with a clear direction. She trained in ballet, studied piano, philosophy, and French at UCLA, and performed with the Los Angeles Opera. Everything about her early years felt deliberate, almost like she was preparing for something bigger without fully knowing what it would be yet. Her first steps into Hollywood came quietly. In 1952, she appeared as a chorus girl in She's Working Her Way Through College, and from there, she slipped into a pattern of small, often uncredited roles. She danced in films like The Bandwagon, and while her presence was noticeable, it wasn't enough to set her apart just yet. Even then, though, there was something about her, tall, poised, impossible to ignore, that kept doors opening. By the mid-1950s, she shifted her focus to New York, stepping onto the Broadway stage. That move changed everything. In productions like Silk Stockings and Little Abner, she didn't just perform, she stood out. Her role as Stupefying Jones in particular turned her into a visual icon of the decade. Magazine spreads, pinups, growing attention, it all started to build. Then in 1961, she reached a different level entirely. Her performance in The Marriage Go Round earned her a Tony Award, cementing her place as more than just a striking presence. She could act, command a stage, and carry a role in a way that critics couldn't ignore. But even with all of that, nothing quite prepared audiences for what came next. In 1966, she was approached to take on a role she didn't even recognize at first, Catwoman in Batman. It wasn't something she chased. In fact, she only agreed after her brother insisted it was worth it. And once she stepped into it, she didn't just follow a blueprint, she created one. She designed the costume herself, adjusting it in a way that emphasized her shape, placing the belt lower on her hips to redefine the silhouette entirely. That catsuit didn't just become iconic, it became the reference point. It was so influential that it eventually found its way into the Smithsonian. On screen, opposite Adam West, her Catwoman carried a kind of tension that audiences hadn't really seen before. It wasn't loud or exaggerated. It was controlled, playful, and just unpredictable enough to keep people watching. Every appearance felt intentional, every movement calculated. And just like that, she became unforgettable. But inasmuch as Batman made her a household name, it didn't open the doors people expected it would. Behind the scenes, scheduling conflicts pulled her away from certain appearances, leading to her being replaced in the 1966 film and later in the show's final season. And once the series ended, the momentum didn't quite carry over the way it should have. She kept working, appearing in shows like Star Trek, taking on film roles like McKenna's Gold, and returning to the stage. But the roles began to blur into familiar territory. The same type of character, the same energy. Almost like the industry had decided where to place her and didn't look beyond it. So instead of waiting for something different, she shifted. In the 1970s, she moved into business, designing her own line of lingerie and later diving into real estate. That decision changed the trajectory of her life in a way acting never fully did. By investing in Los Angeles properties, particularly around Melrose and Fairfax, she became a key figure in transforming those areas into some of the city's most valuable neighborhoods. And just like that, the spotlight wasn't the center of her world anymore. Still, the legacy followed her. Through the 1980s and 1990s, she continued to appear in television and smaller films, while also gaining recognition from a new generation. Designers like Thierry Mugler drew inspiration from her Catwoman look, bringing her back into fashion circles in an entirely different way. She even stepped onto runways and appeared in music videos, proving that her influence hadn't faded. It had just shifted. By the time films like To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar paid tribute to her name, it was clear that what she had created decades earlier was still echoing. Now, at 92 years old, Julie Newmar lives a much quieter life. She still makes occasional appearances at fan conventions, still engages with the audience that never forgot her, and continues to manage her real estate investments. Sally Field. Sally Field didn't just grow up on screen. She outgrew the version of herself the world first fell in love with. At the start, she was the girl next door, bright, cheerful, easy to watch. In shows like Gidget and The Flying Nun, Sally Field felt familiar, almost effortless. But beneath that surface, something else was building, something far more serious, far more determined. Instead of staying where she was comfortable, she stepped away and rebuilt herself from the inside out. Training at the Actors Studio in the early 1970s, she returned with a different kind of presence. Quieter, sharper, impossible to overlook. And once that shift happened, everything followed. Her performance in Sybil cracked things open. Then came Norma Ray, where she carried the weight of a working-class woman fighting for something bigger than herself, and won her first Academy Award. It wasn't luck. It was timing meeting preparation. By the time Places in the Heart arrived, earning her a second Oscar, she had fully stepped into roles that demanded strength, vulnerability, and control all at once. Through the years, she moved seamlessly between intensity and warmth. From Steel Magnolias to Mrs. Doubtfire and Forrest Gump, she became the kind of presence that grounded every story she entered. Even later, in Lincoln and The Amazing Spider-Man, that same emotional weight followed her. Now, at 79 years old, she hasn't disappeared. She's just more selective. She still takes on roles that feel personal, recently appearing in 80 for Brady, while also focusing on writing and speaking openly about her life and career. Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine never really fit into the mold Hollywood tried to give her, and that's exactly why people couldn't look away. At a time when actresses were expected to follow a certain path, she moved differently, thinking differently, speaking differently, choosing roles that didn't always play it safe. She wasn't just part of the system, she kept pushing against it. And for a while, that unpredictability became her signature. But like so many faces from that era, time didn't erase her. It simply changed how the world sees her now. Long before the fame, Shirley MacLaine was already in motion. Born on April 24, 1934, in Richmond, Virginia, she grew up in a household where performance wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Her mother taught drama, and her younger brother, Warren Beatty, would later become a major name in Hollywood himself. But Shirley's path started even earlier. By the age of 3, she was already studying ballet, a discipline that shaped not just her movement, but her mindset. After high school, she moved to New York City, stepping into a life that felt uncertain but necessary. She worked as a dancer and model, taking whatever opportunities came her way, until one moment quietly changed everything. In 1954, while working as an understudy in the Broadway musical The Pajama Game, the lead actress broke her ankle. MacLaine stepped in, and just like that, she was seen. Film producer Hal Wallace noticed her, and almost overnight, the transition from stage to screen began. Her film debut came in The Trouble with Harry, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It wasn't just a starting point, it was a signal. There was something different about her. She had this balance of innocence and experience, a kind of offbeat charm that made her hard to categorize. Hollywood leaned into that, casting her in roles that often played on that contrast. Women who felt both grounded and slightly unpredictable. Through films like Some Came Running, The Apartment, and Irma la Douce, she built a reputation for characters who didn't sit quietly in the background. Her performances earned multiple Academy Award nominations, but more importantly, they carved out a space for her as someone who could carry a story without losing her individuality. And as the years moved forward, so did her roles. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, her characters began to shift. Less wide-eyed, more complex. In Sweet Charity, she played a hopeful woman navigating disappointment without losing herself. In The Turning Point, she stepped into the role of a former ballerina, questioning the choices she had made. These weren't simple characters, and she didn't treat them that way. She gave them weight, frustration, and something that felt real. Then, in 1983, everything aligned. Her performance in Terms of Endearment finally brought her the Academy Award that had been circling her career for years. Playing a strong-willed, complicated mother, she delivered something that didn't just win awards, it stayed with people. But even then, she didn't settle. Into the late 1980s and 1990s, she leaned further into characters that were sharp, outspoken, sometimes difficult, but always human. Whether it was her role in Steel Magnolias or Guarding Tess, there was a rhythm to the way she played these women. They weren't softened to be likable. They were allowed to be exactly what they were. And outside of acting, another side of her life was unfolding, because Shirley MacLaine didn't just explore characters, she explored ideas. Her interest in spirituality, mysticism, and reincarnation became a defining part of her identity. Through books like Out on a Limb and Don't Fall Off the Mountain, she opened up about her beliefs in a way that felt personal, sometimes controversial, but always unapologetic. She wasn't trying to fit into expectations. She was expanding beyond them. That same curiosity carried into her work behind the camera as well. She directed projects, including Bruno, and even earned an Oscar nomination for her documentary, The Other Half of the Sky. It was never just about being seen. It was about understanding, questioning, and creating on her own terms. Even into the 2000s, she remained present. Films like In Her Shoes, Bernie, and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty showed that she hadn't lost her edge. She had simply refined it. And when she appeared in Downton Abbey, it introduced her to an entirely new audience, proving that her presence could still command attention across generations. Now, at 91 years old, Shirley MacLaine lives a quieter, more reflective life. But she hasn't stepped away completely. She still writes, still speaks, and occasionally appears in projects that align with where she is now. Her focus has shifted more toward her long-standing interest in spirituality, continuing to explore and share those ideas with the same confidence she carried throughout her acting career. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda didn't just evolve, she kept rewriting who she was, again and again, right in front of the world. At first, she was light, playful, almost easy to place. Then suddenly, she wasn't. The shift didn't happen all at once. It unfolded quietly, role by role, decision by decision, until the version people thought they understood no longer existed. And that's what made her impossible to ignore then, and strangely harder to recognize now. Before all of that, Jane Fonda was already surrounded by legacy. Born on December 21, 1937, she grew up as the daughter of Henry Fonda, with her younger brother Peter Fonda following a similar path. Acting wasn't distant. It was right there, shaping the air around her. But instead of stepping straight into it, she took her time, leaving Vassar College early and moving to New York, where she modeled and began studying under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. That training changed everything. It gave her depth, control, and something sharper beneath the surface. Her early career, though, didn't reflect that right away. In the 1960s, she leaned into comedy, appearing in films like Cat Ballou and Barefoot in the Park. She was charming, engaging, easy to watch, but it felt like only part of what she could do. And eventually, that wasn't enough. So she shifted. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, her choices became heavier, more deliberate. Films like They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Hinted at it, but Clute confirmed it. Playing a complex, guarded call girl, she delivered something raw and controlled at the same time, and it earned her her first Academy Award. Then came Coming Home, where she stepped into the emotional weight of a woman navigating the aftermath of war, earning her a second Oscar. At that point, the transition was complete. She wasn't just a star anymore. She was taken seriously. But Jane Fonda didn't stop at acting. Because while her career was rising, her voice outside of it was getting louder. She became deeply involved in political activism, speaking out against the Vietnam War and traveling to Hanoi in 1972 in a move that would follow her for decades. The backlash was immediate and intense. Images circulated, opinions hardened, and suddenly, her identity wasn't just tied to film, it was tied to controversy. That moment didn't fade quickly. For years, it stayed attached to her name, reshaping how people saw her. And yet, she didn't retreat from it. She addressed it, apologized for parts of it later, and kept moving forward. Still outspoken, still engaged. At the same time, she found another way to connect with people entirely. In the 1980s, she introduced a fitness program that quietly became a cultural phenomenon. Her workout videos weren't just popular. They redefined how people approached exercise at home. It was another reinvention, one that had nothing to do with film, but everything to do with influence. And still, she kept going. Her career moved through different phases. Films like 9 to 5 on Golden Pond, and later The Morning After showed her range, while her personal life unfolded in parallel through marriages to Roger Vadim, Tom Hayden, and Ted Turner. Each chapter added something different, shaping a life that never stayed in one place for too long. Then, in 1990, she stepped away. For over a decade, she disappeared from the screen, leaving behind a career that had already spanned multiple identities. And when she returned in 2005 with Monster in Law, it wasn't as a comeback. It was as another version of herself. From there, she moved into projects that felt more reflective. Films like The Butler, This Is Where I Leave You, and Our Souls at Night carried a quieter weight, while her role in Grace and Frankie introduced her to a completely new audience. Alongside Lily Tomlin, she stepped into a story about aging, friendship, and reinvention, something that mirrored her own life more than anything she had done before. And even then, she didn't slow down. She continued writing, releasing books about her life, aging, and activism. She spoke openly about climate change, co-founded organizations like the Women's Media Center, and remained involved in causes that had shaped her for decades. Now, at 88 years old, Jane Fonda is still present, just in a different way. She continues to act occasionally, recently appearing in Book Club, The Next Chapter, and 80 for Brady. But much of her focus has shifted toward activism, public speaking, and using her platform to push conversations forward. Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews didn't just have a voice, she had the voice. One that could fill a room, carry across generations, and somehow still feel soft enough to belong to just one person. At her peak, she wasn't just famous, she was everywhere. Her presence felt almost untouchable, wrapped in grace, precision, and that unmistakable sound. But like so many stars of that era, time didn't erase her. It simply shifted her out of the spotlight people once knew her in. Before all of that, Julie Andrews was already performing long before most people ever find their footing. Born on October 1st, 1935, in Walton-on-Thames, England, she stepped onto the stage at just 10 years old, singing alongside her mother and stepfather in a music hall act. Even then, there was something different. Her voice wasn't just strong, it was precise, controlled, almost effortless. By 1947, she made her solo debut at the London Hippodrome, performing an operatic aria that immediately set her apart. It wasn't the kind of start that fades into the background. It was the kind that quietly signals what's coming next. And what came next moved quickly. In 1954, she arrived on Broadway with The Boyfriend, and within just a couple of years, she stepped into the role that would define an entire era, Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. The performance didn't just land, it exploded. The show became one of the biggest hits Broadway had ever seen, and suddenly, Julie Andrews wasn't just rising, she had arrived. Television followed, with Cinderella and then Camelot, each role building on the last, each one reinforcing what audiences were already starting to understand, that she wasn't just talented, she was rare. But the real shift came in 1964. After being passed over for the film version of My Fair Lady, something unexpected happened. Walt Disney saw her perform in Camelot and made a decision that would change everything. He cast her as Mary Poppins. That role didn't just introduce her to a global audience, it defined her image. The film became one of Disney's biggest successes, and she walked away with both an Academy Award and a Grammy. And just as quickly, that image followed her into The Sound of Music, where she played Maria, a role so iconic it became almost inseparable from her identity. For a while, it felt like she could do no wrong, but success like that can be limiting. Because once audiences see you a certain way, it becomes difficult to break out of it. She tried, taking on more dramatic roles, stepping away from musicals, but the shadow of those earlier performances stayed with her. And as the 1960s came to a close, the industry itself began to change. Musicals lost their dominance, and films like Star and Darling Lily didn't land the way people expected. Suddenly, the momentum slowed. She didn't disappear, but the space around her changed. Through the 1970s, she moved between television, concerts, and writing, even publishing children's books under the name Julie Edwards. It wasn't the same kind of visibility, but it was steady, intentional, and still connected to the craft. Then, gradually, she returned. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, audiences began to see her differently. Films like Victor/Victoria reminded people that she wasn't limited to one kind of role. She could be sharp, funny, layered, something more than the image that had once defined her. And from there, she kept adapting. Into the 2000s, she found a new space, not always in front of the camera, but still present. The Princess Diaries introduced her to a younger generation, while voice roles in films like Shrek and Despicable Me kept her connected to audiences who may not have known her earlier work. Even when her voice, once her greatest instrument, was affected by surgery in the late 1990s, she didn't step away completely. She adjusted, shifted, found new ways to stay present. Now, at 90 years old, Julie Andrews lives a quieter life, but she hasn't fully stepped out of view. She continues to write, especially children's books, with her daughter, and occasionally lends her voice to projects that align with her pace and interests. Her focus has moved toward storytelling in a different form, less performance, more reflection. Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren didn't just step into Hollywood, she carried an entire era with her. At a time when beauty alone could open doors, she brought something more: presence, intensity. A kind of confidence that didn't ask for attention, but commanded it anyway. For decades, she wasn't just admired, she was unforgettable. And yet now, the woman who once defined global stardom can move through the world almost quietly, her legacy louder than her presence. Before all of that, Sophia Loren was simply Sophia Villani Ciccolone, born on September 20th, 1934, in Italy. Her early life wasn't built on glamour. It was shaped by survival, by post-war hardship, by finding opportunity wherever it appeared. That opportunity came through a beauty pageant, a small moment that led her toward acting lessons, and eventually her first steps into film at just 16. The beginning was slow. Bit parts, minor roles, faces in the background. But by the mid-1950s, everything shifted. A contract with Paramount opened the door to international cinema, and suddenly, she wasn't just working, she was being seen. Films like The Pride and the Passion, Houseboat, and It Started in Naples turned her into a global figure, while her image as a bold, unapologetic woman made her one of the most recognized symbols of the time. But what truly separated her came in 1960. Her performance in Two Women, directed by Vittorio De Sica, changed everything. It stripped away the glamour and replaced it with something raw, emotional, undeniable. And when she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, becoming the first to do so for a non-English language role, it wasn't just a win. It was a shift in how the world saw her. From there, her career didn't slow. It deepened. Films like Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, and Marriage Italian Style proved she could move between charm and complexity without losing either. Awards followed, recognition followed, but more than that, respect settled into her name. Then, as time moved forward, she made a choice. By the 1980s, she stepped back, appearing less frequently, choosing roles carefully. It wasn't about fading, it was about control. Projects like Grumpier Old Men, 9, and later The Life Ahead showed that when she returned, she still carried the same weight, the same ability to hold attention without forcing it. Now, at 91 years old, Sophia Loren lives mostly in Switzerland, away from the constant noise that once surrounded her. She remains connected to film, occasionally taking on projects that feel personal, most recently reuniting with her son, director Eduardo Ponti, for The Life Ahead. Outside of that, her focus has shifted toward family, legacy, and preserving the story she helped create. Who was your favorite 1960s star? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.